Good afternoon, everybody in Asia. Here we are today for our second session in second day and our third session already in Smart Horticulture Asia. It's my pleasure to have you already in the call, especially the guys in Europe, because it's very early over here. So, guys, good morning, and I hope you had a great start of your day. And of course, good evening, some guys at the other side of the world in North America and the US. Welcome to this third session, and this third session is going about autonomous growing. I'm very happy to have my guest already in the call from New Zealand, Darren Keeler of Autogrow and Bam Kwappo from Shanghai, out of China. So we again have a nice and international program today. But the key question of today is, can autonomous growing secure the growing conditions without staff visiting the crop? And that's an interesting question, especially when you think at COVID times. But let me start first with a small introduction about myself. My name is Harry Schmeitz. I'm working on my own company, Technology Pool, on the edge of technology and innovation in horticulture. And I'm the chairman for the fifth year, and that's very happy to be that of Smart Horticulture Asia, the conference in Asia on new technology and technology disruption in our industry. I work for a lot of programs, especially in the Netherlands, on data, on technology innovation in greenhouses and in outside crops and apples and pears. And I love to do that already since 35 years, because after my study at my University of Applied Sciences, I made a great mistake in my life and I stepped into ICT in 1985. And I don't know how you know ICT looked in 1985, but it wasn't much when we did look at it now. So I had a huge journey in innovation in my lifetime, and we move on today with great speakers in this first session and later on in the robotics session today. But let me go first to what's happening. Let me talk to you what I see is the state of Hortitech. And the state of Hortitech in a lot of our industries is something like this. It's a paper and a pencil, and I'm convinced that is changing. And especially the session today on autonomous growing, the paper and the pencil are completely disrupted. And that's what's happening in our industry. We are going into disruption. And for me, innovation is not enough. What we see is that there are new technologies like artificial intelligence, big data, and things like that are coming in, and they are disrupting our industry. And disruption, ladies and gentlemen, is for me more than just changing things a little bit. It is complete different thinking in the way we approach our technology and we connect our technology to our crops. And that's why we have today two very interesting speakers, because they really are disrupting their industry on this moment with new concepts and new thinking. But ladies and gentlemen, before we go there, all this in the complete program of these sessions, these 6 sessions, is for me part of what I say it will be the disruption in the upcoming 2-3 years in our industry, which I call unmanned growing. In unmanned growing, we have one thing. That's we put the plant in the center of our thinking, and that's not the farm or the yield, or the yield, of course. It's not the farm of the greenhouse or the parcel or the field, but it's an individual plant. We are going and we get the technology to go into individual plant management. And the 2 speakers we have today are working on that very closely. And this is made possible by 3 key technologies which are coming in. The AI, the power of the digital brain, drones, sensors, and all kinds of vision technology which can read the plant, and of course some other things. My slides are going down now. I don't know why, but that's happening when we're doing that. And all those things together with robotics and autonomous growing and unmanned areas, I must not say unmanned areas, I must say controlled areas like vertical farms or controlled greenhouses make this unmanned growing concept for me one of the futures. But let's move on to the speakers. We have a lot to say, and I want to introduce to you our first guest today. For that, we go to New Zealand, to Darren Keeler, CEO of Autogrow, a company which I didn't hear about them 3-4 years ago. And it's amazing how that company is growing based on what I think is an AI strategy in our industry. Darren, great to see you online already. but we're first going to look on the talk you prepared for us.
Hi, I'm Darren Keeler. I'm the CEO of AutoGrow, and I'm here to talk to you about growing in the cloud. So what is the cloud? Well, the cloud's a metaphor, and it's a metaphor for a global network of data centers, and essentially through that we're able to deliver up all sorts of services. Now, as consumers, most of us are familiar with such things as Netflix and other digital content providers, and that's a good example of the types of services that can be delivered over the cloud. In a similar fashion, there's now a raft of new services being innovated for the farming industry that are also delivered the same way. And it includes the fact that the cloud also operates as a way for you to store data, manage that data, and retrieve that data whenever you need it. And that's going to be highly relevant for the three topics that we're going to cover in relation to growing in the cloud. So the first one is around plant biology. So you might think, well, how does that come into it? Well, essentially everything that happens in agriculture starts with that crop cultivar. And it's very important for us to look at around how can we digitize the information in relation to crops, and how does that help improve productivity on the farm in terms of yield, quality, timing to market, and all those things that actually drive farm profitability. So what we start with is looking at how was that particular crop bred to be grown. And this is a very important thing. It's what distinguishes agriculture from everything else. And it's very similar to what happens in human life sciences. You really have to understand the human body if you're going to apply technology to it in the same way that you do with crops. So what we do is we talk to a lot of the seed companies and we look at what happens with the way they're breeding those seeds, because they're trying to get them to have certain characteristics. Maybe they want the fruit to have a certain color. Maybe they want to have a certain shape, a certain size. Maybe they want it to be resistant to certain types of pests or pathogens. And all these things are really important to understand if you're going to grow those really effectively. Now, the way it's done today is that all of that information has to be kept in the heads of growers, and that means that it's very hard to pass that information on to other people or to have it stored for all time, and that creates risk for farm operators. So the great thing about the cloud is that you can now move all of that practice information that relates to that specific production of that cultivar, and you can store it in the cloud. At which point you can share it with other people, you can manipulate it, you can effectively put it to better purpose. So that's basically the relationship between plant biology, physiology, and the cloud. The second thing is data science. So data science is what powers artificial intelligence. So everybody talks about AI, and when you kind of get below that term, you get into things like machine learning and deep learning, regression algorithms. There's lots of different things that make up what comprises artificial intelligence. But fundamentally, it's mathematics and data science. And the clue is in the title, it is the science of data. And it's about how do we apply that into agricultural production. So we've already touched on looking at the cultivars and how we might take information about those and digitize it. We also then look at other things, like basically all the environmental factors, and this is particularly important when it comes to things like controlled environment farming, where we've got the ability to actually influence the way those environments are managed. And so we turn all of that into data, and through taking all that data, we then create models. We use those models to basically create what the ideal growing situation should look like, and we basically then help steer the farmer and steer the plant towards what its optimal outcome was designed to be. It's super cool stuff. And the reason why we have to hire data scientists to be part of that journey. The third part is around the cutting edge technology. Well, essentially no new digital farming technology gets created without having some connection to the cloud. And if people are still producing technologies that are essentially only available to be delivered on premise to the farm, then they're really missing the trick, because the fact is that you need to be able to take whatever that's doing. It could be a machine vision system or some form of robotics, any of these new contemporary technologies that are going to be used for planting, pruning, harvesting, and so on, and you need to get all of that up into the cloud. And that way we can look at relationships between different systems and between different practices that are going on the farm, which you cannot do in any other way except in the cloud. And that is the advantage of the cloud. It's the ability to bring things together, to unify data and information, and then help spread it back out. to the grower and to the industry. That kind of covers, in a nutshell, the three main areas: plant biology, data science, and technology. My challenge to you guys is that you really need to get into this stuff. You need to look into all the new things that are coming. You need to think about how you can apply that to the farm. And you need to move from what is today mechanization and analog. So get away from the spreadsheets and the notebooks and everything and being in people's heads, and you need to move it all into a digital application on the cloud. That's my challenge to you. Thank you for your time.
Darren, thanks for this great talk and welcome in this digital stage of Smart Horticulture Asia. Great to have you in from New Zealand. I think the best protected COVID country in the world on this moment. So you are very healthy and very safe. We have some issues over there in Europe and especially in the Netherlands, I think, but it's great to have you over here and to listen to your call. Thanks for that up front. Great session again. Let me ask something. You choose a very explicit for the cloud, and that's, I think, another strategy than some of your competitors are doing or some of your colleagues are doing, con-colleagues, I don't know how to call them, to bring all data to the cloud. Can you explain a little bit more why that explicit strategic choice to bring it to the cloud?
Sure. Look, I think that to take advantage of any of the new technologies that are available, you need to be able to group all of that data and information into the cloud so that you can essentially access it, manipulate it, and derive new insights with it. And so, the problem is you can't do that on premise. And if you look at the history of the industry, everything has been about on-farm, on-premise systems. So there's just a limit on what you can do with the information that's contained on the farm. As soon as you elevate it to the cloud, then there's all sorts of new applications and services that you can bring to bear on it.
You already also showed, I can follow that. The cloud gives you the opportunity to connect data, especially, but on the connection of data, what was really nice for me was your slide on the weather or the climate in the greenhouse, where you showed those layers with data points. That were amazing number of data points. Do you imagine the growers can follow that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we actually had one of our consulting growers into the company today, where we walked him through the three-dimensional modeling of the environment, and then what's not apparent on that data visualization is that actually you can then drill down into the crop all the way down to the leaf layer. So what we do is we basically build a three-dimensional composite of what the actual plant looks like. And then from that, you can then determine what is the microclimate conditions around the individual tomatoes and the individual leaves. So it gets very precise about what you can actually extract in terms of information around the health of the plant, around whether there's a pest or pathogen incursion or one that's likely. And he was really excited about it because he's a 30-year grower, commercial grower, and he'd been involved in giving us input into the design about 6 months ago. So he's been very excited to see the way that it's manifesting. And for him, this kind of three-dimensional way of being able to pivot the environment and look at the environment three-dimensionally, that's really powerful for someone who knows what they're looking for.
Yeah. Okay, so you think he should? Because the question for me was, shouldn't the grower get trust into those systems and just say, okay, it's okay? Yeah?
Sure.
When you drive your Tesla, you put on, let's say.
I think this is the crazy thing, Harry, that these technologies for all of us are very commonplace on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we're all interacting with applications on our mobile devices, on at home, when we're choosing between different digital content providers, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, and for all of us who've got, I mean, my son's 23 years old. He plays a lot of gaming, so he's on his PS4, soon to be PS5, I guess. And you watch what's happening with gaming, experiences, which are becoming very immersive. And so all of these types of applications are very commonplace in every other part of our life except for agriculture. It's crazy. Really, the whole industry is stuck in a time bubble from 20, 30 years ago. And I don't see why people can't trust the way this technology gets done. It's time to leave the spreadsheet and move to the cloud. That's basically the message.
Looking at that, Devin, I always ask me the question, when you measure something on the detail, what can you do with it? How can you act based on that? And when I look into traditional greenhouses, the action possibilities are not so much. It's open a valve or closing a valve or giving a little more EC or adding some temperature, but it's always for the whole greenhouse or half of it or a third of it. How do you think?
Yeah, I don't agree with that, Harry. We've moved forward from that. I think if you think about traditional automation, which was based on very simple algorithms,
open and close.
Yeah, then those are the simple functions that the automation computers were doing. What we do now is we look at the biological, and you said this, you set this up right at the beginning of this session, is that it's all about focusing first on the plant. And that's what we do. We look at what is the biological, physiological nature of that particular cultivar? How did the breeders design it to grow? What were its characteristics meant to be? And so we use that as a frame of reference to which we then apply data science and technology. You can't just throw technology at a problem without understanding, how it works with a living organism like a tomato or a cucumber or a pepper or whatever the plant is. So, that's a very important difference, I think, about how technology is applied in agriculture and horticulture compared to how it might be done in other sectors.
Yeah. I saw some great stuff in your movie. That robots which are coming down from the ceiling, where can I buy them?
Some of the images that are in there are obviously conceptual. I think the most interesting thing about robotics is that, it's a shame too with the pandemic having arrived on us the way that it did, that actually when you look at the impact that there's been to enterprise and commercial growers, particularly around labor, is that, robotics is not ready yet. And it's not anywhere near mature enough to be applied. And it was interesting. We were having a discussion with an enterprise grower who I won't name last week, and he was like expressing discomfort with the idea of paying us a subscription fee, which was a very reasonable amount of money, for a data-driven approach to yield prediction, and had expressed that as an alternative they could look to use robotics as a solution. And he cited a project that's running in the Netherlands, actually a prototype product with robotics, to do that same work using machine vision. But the point that I made to him is that compared to us charging you a few $100s per month per hectare, that he was seriously going to consider paying 250,000 euro for a robotic platform that would probably only work in 1 hectare of greenhouse space. The thing is that the robotics is so early. It's exciting, don't get me wrong, but it is not an affordable, scalable technology right now. Whereas a lot of and I don't really think the growers are ready for robotics yet, until it becomes more mature as a technology and it's more affordable. So I think that a lot of cloud-based solutions, data-driven solutions, are more easily within the grasp of the industry to actually take advantage of.
Stay tuned for the next session, I think, because that was happening a lot on robots. A question on that: how are these robots, and also your data points, how are they localized in the farm, in the greenhouse? I think localization is one of the big issues. In the open field, you have GPS, you know exactly where you stand. In the greenhouse, that doesn't work. How do you see, how should that develop?
I think that there's a couple of things there. One is you obviously have the existing climate computer infrastructure that's already on the farm. We've also developed another industry-leading solution called Folium, which is, a smart sensor network, and that essentially is about providing greater data density. And we talked before we went on to the show tonight that we've got the release of Folium 2, right? And so there's a big announcement coming out overnight about the enriched features and functionality of that platform. But what you'll see in that is the answer to that question, which is, it's all localized on-farm data, but the way we present it is through the cloud. And that's where all the analysis is done and where we generate the heat maps and we do all the clever things. And it's more about how we influence farming practice. So it's not analytics for the sake of analytics. It is how does that inform the grower to make a better decision? That's essentially what it's about. And it's never going to be solely on-premise based data. It's a fusion now between what is on farm and what is in the cloud, and how we bring those two things together.
Yeah. And I saw also an amazing sprayer. The sprayer has data. How interoperable is that data with your systems? How interoperable are data in our industry, by the way?
Well, look, the great thing with what we built, with Farm Road, which is our primary, farm and crop management platform, is that it's open. And this is something that we've talked about with a lot of people, is that it's we've got a truly open platform. So we will integrate with Priva, we will integrate with Hugendorn, with Argus. It doesn't, anyone who's got an open system, we will integrate with.
Okay, thanks. I think that are the questions for now. We didn't get any Slidos in. People who want to ask questions, please put them on your Slido, and we will take them into the discussion with my speakers today. I think, Darren, that's all for now. We see you at the end of the session again together with Bram to have some more discussions. But let me first go to our next guest from Koppert. Not from Koppert, old guys. From Priva, we have Bram Koppert from China in the house. He is talking from us from Shanghai. I think, Bram, you are on this moment. He is General Manager Asia of Priva, and he's going to talk with us on data-driven greenhouses. Bram, let's first have a look on the talk you prepared for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome at my presentation about autonomous growing technology at the Smart Horticulture Asia Congress. My name is Bram Koppert, and I am representing Priva. I'm based in Shanghai. Would you have any questions after my presentation, please contact me. My contact information will be shown on the last slide. Priva is known as a high-tech software company in the horticulture industry. Daily we work with more than 80 colleagues in R&D to develop our software modules and other technologies, and we have another 300 colleagues in Holland and worldwide for servicing, selling, and promoting our installations and modules. We are probably best known for our advanced and stable greenhouse process automation, which is known as Connext, or the high quality water systems for irrigation, recycling, and disinfection. Our headquarters is based in the Netherlands, in the middle of the Westland, which is the center of horticulture developments worldwide. But we also have offices in the US, in Mexico, in Canada, all over Europe, in Australia, and in China. And we are proud that last year we had our 60 years anniversary. So there is lots of history and dynamics behind Priva. Autonomous growing is a buzzword these days in our industry. And it's right, because so much new developments are going on in our market. And that's why I'm happy also today to share our insights and our vision on these developments, and show you what Priva is already doing in the field of autonomous growing. We see, and there is good reason for the market to be focusing on autonomous growing, because we see an increased demand for healthy and sustainable and safe food production. So that is pushing the demand for a controlled environment. So we see an increase of greenhouses worldwide. But at the same time, we see a lack of skilled growers. So we see more greenhouses, and at the same time, less and less skilled growers to operate these greenhouses. And we also see that of the greenhouses that are being built, the projects become bigger and bigger and more complex. And that asks for much more technological development, and luckily that is going on in a very healthy speed in our market. In some sense, autonomous growing is nothing new. Priva, as a leader in this in the market for process automation, has been doing this for many years. Actually, from the start, it has always been the goal to improve the conditions, the growing conditions for the plant, and to make life for the grower easier. So it is in the core of Priva's technology to make growing better and easier, which is now called autonomous growing. Therefore, we realize also that it's super important if you want to continue with more AI-based autonomous growing, that you still have this very reliable and stable hardware base in your operations, in your greenhouse. In the current picture on the screen, that is shown as the lowest level, where you see climate control systems, heating systems, irrigation systems, and it can also be as basic as an I/O board or sensors. If anything breaks, then anything above in this picture will not work properly. So that is one of the focus, the first focus of Priva, to keep investing in this core technology to build our autonomous growing software on. Only from that starting point, with a good hardware base, you can start looking at cloud solutions and autonomous growing, and that's what is seen in the middle and in the top layer. There are a couple of basic principles for Priva's autonomous growing strategies. First of all, at this moment, the grower is still in control. We are moving away from thousands of settings in our current software solution to a simple 6 settings with which the grower can still determine his growing strategy and can set some settings for ventilation minimum or maximum or screen positions. It gives him the opportunity to steer a crop to a vegetative mode or generative, so that he keeps the flexibility in different seasons to push for his own growing strategy. The second principle is that it's all about the plant. It's not about creating the right temperature in the greenhouse. It's not about creating the right humidity in the greenhouse. It is all about making sure that the plant can evaporate, that the plant can focus on producing either plant mass or on produce, so fruit development. And it's really as simple as that. And the rest will be done by the system. Another important principle of Priva's autonomous growing strategy is that we approach it as an integrated solution to manage your crop. And in the end, it's not only the plant that is important for the grower. Of course, we want to have the highest yield or the highest sweetness in a tomato bricks, but energy cost can be very high, or labor cost can be very high, so that need to be taken into account as well. And that can be done in one system. Recently, on another seminar in Bangkok, I was asked if autonomous growing could also be used by small-scale growers. And my answer is very clearly, yes, it can, and it will be. Small growers have very different challenges than big growers. It's another game where big investment growers are looking for expansion to help them to scale up, become bigger. Small growers are looking for risk reduction. We help them to improve. Where big growers are looking, where big growers are having trouble finding good and enough head growers, the small growers rely on one person, often the owner, with all the knowledge. But what happens if this person gets ill, or if it's an employee, when he leaves? Then there is a big hole in the operation. So professional big growers face different challenges and can make use of autonomous growing developments in their own way. It helps the big growers to scale the span of control of one head grower, so it can continue expanding without too many risks. And it can help small growers to improve the yields and reduce uncertainties and reduce the risk of depending on one person. Priva's current focus is on autonomously creating the right environment for the plant to evaporate. But looking at it a little bit broader in the market, there are many more challenges towards a real autonomous greenhouse, where no labor is needed anymore. And that is a very exciting future. At Priva, we're also working on robotics for leaf cutting, for harvesting, for yield prediction, pest and disease prediction, many other applications. But beyond that, there is much more to do to make a real autonomous greenhouse. And it's maybe hard to make a prediction when in the market this will be realized. But with the combined efforts of all companies and all beautiful companies in this industry working, I believe that we can get there. And it is beautiful to draw this picture for yourself and to imagine the future of growing. So if you are interested in more information, please get connected to us, and we are very happy to help you further. Thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Bram, for this great insights on your company view on autonomous growing and your vision on that. It was great to see how you look at that. And of course, I think you are the first time on stage now. Welcome from Shanghai here in the Netherlands, maybe in the UK something where we are, and sending back to Singapore. That's how the vision works on this moment. Great to have you here. I have a few questions for you. I don't hear you. Is your sound on?
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's okay. One first question for you from me, and later on we will wrap up some things together with Darren. I think Priva choose a different model. Darren is talking about going fully to the cloud. You say more, no, it's more a hybrid model. Put things on the systems local and connect them by the cloud. How do you see that?
I don't think it's necessarily a hybrid model. What we recognize is that we need a hardware base in the greenhouse, and that has been always very much the basis of the Priva growth. So we need this very high quality hardware to get the right data to the cloud. From the cloud applications, you can do brilliant things with AI or just monitoring, just making graphs. And we recognize we need both to get the cloud applications working properly.
Yeah. I must say you are one of the oldest companies in this industry. When I left school, you already exist, Priva. But do you think that we have enough data in our arena to make models we needed? Because when somebody has the data, your company must be.
Indeed, there is so much data available, and sometimes it's even difficult to label the data correctly. So for us, the experience over the last years is not to find more data, it's to find the useful data. So we try not to use the term big data in our company, but useful or smart data that we can use. We see lots of applications growing and coming to the market that are focused purely on data, and I fully agree with the previous speaker, Darren. It's a combination of this biological process and the data that we can use to improve it.
But go back to your useful data. What you mean, in my opinion, is you say we need more data quality, huh? And to get data quality, you need data governance in the company to get the right data. Huh? That's, I think, what you are stating, and that's all I want to give to my viewers. That's a very important thing in our industry. I see it all around the globe, big projects starting, and then the basics data. There is a lot of data. The USB sticks are full, the hard drives are full, but there is no connection. There is no interoperable. Key fields are maybe in the data set, but not filled in and things like that. And I think one of the things our industry should learn is that before they can do things with data, they also first want to have to optimize their data sets and to make them together. Okay. And how do you think data interoperability is on this moment? Is it easy to connect your systems with other systems?
Priva is sometimes known or regarded not so open, and but I think that's quickly changing. Everyone realizes, and also a company like Priva, that there is online and smart development from anywhere in the world. I mean, we see big companies coming to this market. We see small startups doing very smart things. And Priva is getting much more open in that way to work with third parties. I think it was visible clearly in one of my slides where we presented the Priva platform, and which gives third parties the opportunity to connect to us, where we can build APIs or build connections together and improve the needs of the grower, to improve the growing process. Yes.
You made in your session one interesting statement. It's all about the plant, plantonomy. You talk about plant mass versus fruits. That's genetic versus vegetation or vegetative growth. What interesting me is, do you expect that we can get models where the grower doesn't have to make the decision, do I choose for plant mass or do I choose for fruit? Because I think that is connected to the market and the market predictions. Are we getting a model that they put on more growth because the market for tomatoes in 6 weeks is getting higher or something like that?
Yes, I definitely do believe that we will get there. I'm sorry for interrupting. It's a little bit in the speed. So I do believe that we will get there in the future. That the models get prediction abilities based on maybe energy cost, maybe demand, request, or prices. Would you ask me, are we there now? No, we are not there yet. But I do foresee that in the future that these kind of applications will be connected. Yes, and it's not only about prices or about production. In the end, it's an economic model for a grower. So it's also cost, energy cost, labor cost, to optimize everything and make sure everything is connected. Yes, I believe we will get there, and rather soon we will get there.
Okay, thank you for this first Q&A. I think we ask Darren and guys, maybe the UK can put on the on-off button, and there he is. Hello, Darren. Great to have you back. I know it's a late evening at your place, so but it's very early in the morning for us. So, nice to have you in. One question I want to ask to you both is the lack on skilled growers. Bram mentioned it in his talk on the interaction and the lack of skilled growers. How can technology replace them, or can technology be used to skill them? Maybe the other way out, to educate them. How do you look at that? Your views, please. Let's start with Darren in New Zealand.
Thanks, Harry. Look, I mean, this is part of the core proposition of Farm Road, which is fundamentally to transfer knowledge onto the system, onto the platform, and capture that knowledge. Because, you know, the average age of a farmer or grower is 58 in most developed countries. And many of them are fast heading towards retirement. So part of what we see is that this risk to the industry at the very time that we need to be producing more, that we have fewer people who know how to do it, who know how to grow. So I think that also, you know, the range of skill varies across the world in terms of capability of growers. So I definitely see technology playing a huge role in digitizing that knowledge and actually helping guide commercial farming operations on how they should be operating the farm and how they should be growing the produce.
Before we go to Bram, to also the same question, guys, ask your questions by Slido. The first ones are coming in, so we can take them into account. Bram, how do you look at that? Skilled growers? It's I fully agree. I see that in the Netherlands, but I think it's around the globe alike. So.
Yeah, we see that worldwide. That especially in the scaling of the projects of the food production, there it's difficult to find the really high level experienced growers. And you know, if you look back at the history of this industry, all the automation, all the technological developments have helped growers to skill, have helped growers to make their life a little bit easier. And this is a next step in that. And for all the companies, it is necessary to keep pace if they want to keep scaling. And it is also pushed extra, or got an extra push, because of the interest of financial institutions now in our market, who wants to get a more predictable business model, and all these technologies, data can help to improve that.
Okay, guys, we have one question from the audience, and with respect, they are always first. With automation, what are your strategies to deal with pests and diseases, prevention, and if they do enter? Thank you.
Okay, I'll start.
Well, how can Automate help your pest and disease management? That's, I think, for me, and your strategy on that.
Well, I would say that it's not automation. I mean, we would see that more as something that's answered through more advanced sensing of the environment. So the work we're doing is around how we're doing more advanced microclimate analysis. I said earlier that, you know, the definition of a microclimate keeps coming in. So it used to be the climate around the greenhouse, then it became the climate inside the greenhouse. Now it's the climate around the plant. So when we're looking at conditions like, you know, powdery mildew, for example, you know, we then look at what are the, you know, temperature, humidity, light level factors that would affect that, and therefore what prediction can we do based on the data around how likely is that condition to occur or not occur. And if we can predict that it's going to happen, then we can send an alert to the grower so they can take some preventative action. That's a kind of like a practical way of how data analytics meets the grower's practice. So for me, it's not automation, it's more to do with, insights that then benefit practice on the farm.
Prediction based on data, you say? Yeah. Bram?
Yeah, I certainly think that by increasing the predictability, the farmer can take earlier action, and by having a higher accuracy, that can improve the pest and disease control. Another way to think of might be vision technology, which is developing also rather quickly. Yeah. And simply with scanning or making pictures of the crop, you can find the hotspots, you can find where it is developing. Often a good grower knows where are the problems in his crop, but as we said, as the experienced growers are lacking, this kind of vision technology tools can help you to take early action and improve the pest and disease control.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned it because I saw a scanner in the US, which is a spore scan. He can see the spores of mildew instead of the disease. He can look into and he count the spores in the air, and it's amazing to see how new sensor technology can help growers in this. But that's not my session today on. We are on autonomous growing. Another thing I want to ask you, I invited you both to ask each other a question. So let's start with Ron. What is the question you want to ask to your co-colleague in New Zealand?
Yes, thank you, Harry. Darren, I was triggered by your by the discussion about the robotization and the connection to the automation, and
Sure.
I am looking forward to the moment, and I know we are not there yet, but that was also the closing of my presentation. I do believe one day we can run a greenhouse completely autonomously. What would be your prediction on that, and what would be the biggest hurdle in this industry that we still need to make? And I don't necessarily mean your or our company, really as an industry. What is the biggest hurdles that we still need to make to come to a true autonomous greenhouse and grow any crop in there?
Great question,
Yeah,
Bram.
It's an excellent question, Bram. Thank you. Look, like you, we agree that the end game is the autonomous farming system. So I think the industry is aligned around this concept of that this is where we land. What is also very apparent is that it's not going to be a solution that comes from one provider. It's going to be, how do we collaborate as an industry? How do we, as an ecosystem of providers, because we're dealing with very complex issues, how do we bring all that together? So I think that there's a physical layer which comprises that combination of the automation systems as we know them today, more advanced robotics for sure. I think for adoption of that at scale, there's going to be a dramatically lowered cost threshold for robotics to be broadly adopted. And then the piece at the top, which is the piece that we focus on, is the intelligence of that system. And so it's the marriage between these different layers and how they'll come together to form the autonomous system. Now, if you think about some of the initiatives that are going on today, we're seeing this turn up in the indoor vertical farming space, where they've got the ability to create a completely controlled environment. But that's not going to solve all problems in terms of where food needs to be produced. So the reality is that we need to find ways of adapting this or adopting this new technology to different farming situations. But in the end, it's going to be collaboration between players in the industry that will get us there collectively.
Okay, now your question for Ron.
Sure, my one's actually a market question because I've been in and out of China a few times in the last 2 years, and it seems to me, I know there's a lot of growth opportunity there because a lot of the Dutch companies I speak to, especially the greenhouse integrators, are very active in China. I was curious as to what level of adoption are you seeing of more high-tech farming approaches, and in terms then of the cloud and data and robotics, how much appetite do you see amongst the China-based producers to move towards that more high-tech approach to farming?
Very good question. The Chinese market, especially for food production, is growing indeed rapidly. There is lots of government policies pushing this market forward. The current COVID-19 situation also pushed that even further. and realize that, China is that big. All around all the cities, there are plans to have production areas, production locations for fresh food. And in general, if you look, in the Chinese population, there's a very high level of adapting to new technologies. And that's a broad thing, I think, in society in China. We stepped here over. We forget the complete PC. We went to laptops. Forget email. It was never adopted. We got to WeChat, and we see the same. This is the generation. It's working in the greenhouse. That's the generation that's making the decisions for these projects. So there's a lot of willingness to do. But if you ask really about what is the practical application at this moment, it's not that high yet, because many projects, the teams still need to learn really how to grow, and teams still need to get this experience of a second and a third year of operation. I mean, operating a greenhouse is more than only growing a tomato, right? There is so much more to do. So I do expect very quick adaptation in the coming years. If you look at today, when it comes to cloud solutions, yes, there is a lot of adaptation already. If you look at robotics, not so much yet, because there is so much other things to learn first.
Okay, thanks for this great insight, Bram, in the China market. A good question, Darren. I could have asked them. But let me go bring this session to a final end, because we are running a little bit out of time. We have 5 minutes more, but I think we have some short break before we start the next session with on robotics. And my speakers are already in our green room. So 2 short questions. And I want to ask you to answer them only by yes or no. The first question is autonomous growing something for a big grower or a small grower? Small or big?
Both.
Yeah, I'd say both.
Guys.
You didn't ask a yes or no question.
Never ask you guys things like that. Oh, it's crazy. Then one other thing. I want to ask you a question. I want to hear a year. When are we approaching the phase that we have an on-off button on a plant by autonomous growing?
I would say 20. Like you mean broadly adopted, or just that somebody's achieved it?
We have the opportunity to put it, because for me, autonomous growing is putting an on-off button on a plant. Huh?
I would think, like, in terms of something that was scalable, probably 2030. In terms of someone proving it in a lab,
just a year, 2030.
Prototype environment.
2030, just a year, 2030. Well,
I find it very hard, because I still believe in the biological process of plants and of the cycles of our universe. So I find it very hard to say there will be an on-off button that you can switch on, switch off. If I need to pick a year, I would go a little bit further, and probably to 30 years at least.
Okay, guys, thanks. Great talk, and I experienced the last answer that we have some time to talk more in Smart Horticulture Asia events, the upcoming year on autonomous growing. Thank you for being my guest in this event today. Stay tuned for the next robotic sessions, because you all both made some statements on that, and I think it would be great for you to see the next session. We are going to close down this. We put a smart break in. I will grab a coffee, and we start again at 7 o'clock in the Netherlands. I have no idea what that time will be in your time zone, but that's in around 6 minutes. Thank you for now, and was great doing it again. Thanks.
Thank you, Harry.